and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar presented by the IoT M2M Council, sponsored by ARIS. Since it's in 2013, over 25,000 adopter members have joined the IoT M2M Council, which has focused on making the implementation of IoT and M2M solutions simpler, faster, and more profitable for its member base. If you're not a member, please consider joining by applying on our website, iotm2mcouncil.org. But there are a few items that I would like to bring to the attention of our viewers. The presentation will be approximately 40 minutes long, followed by a 20-minute Q&A session. This is an interactive webinar, so we are eager to receive your questions at any time. Just type them into the Q&A window on your screen. Our panelists will address as many of the questions as possible during the Q&A segment following the presentations. Please ask questions to all panelists, which is the default setting in the Q&A box. The presentation will be archived and available for viewing later on in the webinar section of the IoT M2M Council website. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Saverio Romeo, Chief Research Officer with Beecham Research. Saverio runs research in the areas of M2M, Internet of Things, and wearable technologies. He has researched in areas such as mobile healthcare, smart utility, data analytics, smart farming, M2M IoT connectivity, and M2M IoT platforms. Saverio worked as an M2M mobile analyst at Frost & Sullivan, telecommunications policy analyst at Technopolis Group, European Commission, and a software developer at DS Group. Saverio?
Welcome all. Thank you, David, for the introduction. It is my pleasure to be here discussing our topic on the IoT solution development and simplification of the process, as the title says. And I'm here with two speakers. The first one is Zio Zain, and the second one is Evan Whitelock. Now, introducing Zio Zain is quite a complicated task. He's one of the most experienced professional in the IoT M2M space. He has spent, I guess, 35 or even more years in telecoms. And a good way to say is if you want to write a book on the history of machine-to-machine communication, ubiquitous computing, Internet of Things, Z is a perfect candidate for that. So a very experienced individual here share with you his experience and the ideas from Harris Communication Companies, who is the founder and CTO of that company. Then we have Evan Whitelock, which I guess he represents the next generation in the Harris Communications. Has been in Harris for 6 years and is the product marketing manager of the company. He's in charge of responsible for product development, go-to-market strategies, and sales enablement. And he has direct experience in how to engage with medium-sized and large-sized enterprises when those enterprises want to develop IT solutions. So, two experienced speakers to discuss how IoT solutions are designed and for what purposes and which are the challenges in designing those IoT solutions. My role really is just to introduce quickly the discussion and show which are the trends in designing an IoT solutions. And here on the slides I'm showing now, there is a macro view of what the components of an IoT solutions are. You have the hardware, so the sensors, the actuators, the devices, the gateways, the modules. You have the connectivity, and then you have the platform. And platform have a number of components that need to be in consideration. Now, you do not use all of these, use some of them. It depends on the context. The IoT is very context-aware, situational-aware, so it is more owning the various blocks in order to respond to your specific requirements. And these specific requirements, if you go to the next slide, are also very diverse. Not per application, but for purposes, what you actually want to do with these devices. And this is an extract of some work we are doing in Bicham Research. We talk with adopters of the IoT, so the organization who want to develop an IoT solutions, asking them what they actually want to do with these devices connected. And you can see there that there are 5 types of activity, from monitoring simply, or controlling remotely, or predicting future behavior, or automating, that there is not one activity that is dominant. But there are several activities that can be put in place simply because different projects in which you want to be involved require different objectives. And which concerns on which I believe there will be more discussion from our panelists. Is an extract of a very interesting work done by the Eclipse IoT Foundation. Is a developer survey that the Eclipse IoT Foundation runs every year, showing a number of things, discuss type of programming languages uses, type of connectivity uses, and so on. And this, I took this graph just to highlight which are the key concerns from for developers or for organizations who want to develop an IoT solutions. And probably from this graph, I would say with one element, one important element, which I'll briefly touch. Definitely security, as you can see along the 3 years, is the top one. And then there is interoperability. We have a lot of things using different protocols, different connectivity without speaking much to each other, so it's an issue. And we have the other 2, the connectivity. What type of connectivities am I going to use? I don't know, it depends. And also the integration. Here I explain more on integration with hardware because it's from the Eclipse IoT Foundation. You can understand why, but generally integrating the old blocks is quite a challenge. So the other one that probably should be highlighted is not in this slide, is scalability. You want to develop an application, it's nice, it's going well with 100 devices, but you actually wanted to see it working properly, generating data with millions of devices. And it's not always an easy step from 100 to 1 million or even 100,000. So here, just to touch a bit the purposes of the main challenges around developing IoT solutions, why you want to do it, and what you need to consider in order to do it. And I think now, and I stop here just as an introduction, and I give the audience to the panelists for their part, and to see they will tell us more about these aspects even more, and how Harris Communications can help that. Evan, can you carry on and tell more about all this?
Mario, thank you so much for teeing this topic up for us today. Obviously, we want to talk about get started with IoT and some of the challenges that a lot of people face when they're developing solutions for the first time. And so, thank you for giving some context for the discussion today. So, before we get started in addressing some of the specific challenges that we want to cover today, I did want to just for a second take a quick step back and cover a little bit about who is Aris in our NEO solution. That is very targeted for the developer community. So, Aris Communications, we are a global IoT solutions provider in the connectivity and platform space, focus on providing those solutions to a wide array of different companies in IoT. And one section of that customer base is the developer community. And so we've actually created a specialized self-service connectivity platform, which we call NEO. And it's been designed, again, for companies who are looking to get started with their IoT development and make it easier for them to get connected and to take what they're working on Cellular connectivity, the online marketplace makes it so you can get SIM cards immediately, drop ship directly to your door, no contracts, no commitments, and you a connectivity management portal that as you develop, you have a clear idea, a clear understanding of what your usage requirements are, what you're seeing from a device communications and performance standpoint. So for more information on all this, please feel free to go to aris.com or neo.aris.com and more there. One other quick point on Neo before we get started. Did just want to cover some of the high-level value propositions and why we developed this platform for developers. It's very much targeted to deliver things like immediate access to connectivity to speed up your time to market. Obviously, pricing is a concern, especially for companies getting started who may not have the volume to go negotiate a good connectivity rate with a larger carrier. Our pricing is very upfront, very simple, and very competitive. And the connectivity management platform that gives you the tools to really understand what devices are doing to identify trends over time and see how your devices are performing as you're fine-tuning that application and that usage profile. Obviously, any cellular connection is only as good as where the coverage is, so we provide multiple coverage options for you to make sure that you are connected everywhere you need to go. I mentioned the no contracts or minimums. We want to get you started faster without having to worry about penalties or commitments or any of that. And different pricing models so that you only have to pay for the data that you use. You don't have to buy bulk data upfront and so forth. So again, just wanted to cover Neo very quickly. If you do have more questions, please visit neo.aris.com. Information is laid out there for you. So, but now that we've got that out of the way, we can jump into the heart of what we wanted to talk about, which was some of the key challenges that we see that developers face as they are building their IoT solutions, whether it's for the first time or their next generation solution. We see a lot of these challenges are consistent. Starting with speed to market, getting started, there's a lot of questions that we'll cover that may cause some delays because of the uncertainty, and not everybody knows exactly which direction to head. And those delays can impact how quickly solutions get to market, how quickly they can be successful. A lot of that bleeds into the next part, which is scalability. Saverio touched on that, and that's a major topic of concern when people are planning out their deployments for the first time is what happens when we are successful? How does this grow from a dozen units to 100 to thousands to tens of thousands? And then as solutions scale, then that last point, security becomes an even larger concern. You can't read too many IoT articles these days without seeing some sort of threat, a security breach or something. And it's becoming more and more of a concern as we move to an even more connected world. So we will cover some of those challenges that we see going through. And I believe we have a poll coming up right now that I want to touch on real quick before we jump into it. So I'm going to give you a minute very quickly to answer the poll. And just at a high level, we'd love to hear from you where you are in your IoT journey. Are you in an exploratory stage where you've read some articles and seen some predictions and are looking to see how they apply to your business? Moved on to that next step of actually building a proof of concept? Are you actually in a deployment or moving towards a deployment in the next 3 months? Maybe then scalability is something you're thinking about. Or have you already moved past that and you are deployed and you're looking for the next generation, looking to take it bigger? So we'd love to hear. Take a minute, please, and select kind of which state you are, and then we will take a look at the results in just about 30 seconds or so. Oh, I clicked my button. Okay, well, And those results are very good. So we can see that majority of the people in the audience are kind of split between the first two categories, looking to see if IoT is right, and a lot of you already moved on to the proof of concept. So, very good to see, and a lot of what we're going to talk about is addressed for the concerns that you guys are probably seeing right now. We're going to touch on some of the things like scalability and security that may address the other groups. But pretty in line, Z, I think, with what we expected to see. From coming in.
Absolutely, I think so. I think the fact that developers are clearly interested in the next steps, exploring, understanding what IoT can do, and perhaps at the stage of exploring connectivity items and connectivity capabilities and what's possible for them to use, etc. I think this is the right place to address these concerns.
Great. Well, we're on to the next slide and getting into some of the challenges. One thing I'll notice, and that was Z speaking right there, if you noticed, it still probably showed up as my voice on the screen speaking. Z and I are in the same conference room, but I think our voices are different enough you'll be able to differentiate. You can also tell the person that is clearly far more intelligent. That is absolutely Z. So
that I don't agree with, but that's fine.
But okay, so want to talk about some of the concerns around some of the challenges, I'd say, around getting solutions launched and getting solutions to the market. Obviously, in emerging technology deployment, speed to market is very critical. And some of the factors that impact speed to market are certainly around technology uncertainty is the first one I'll address here. Especially when we look at the cellular landscape, I'm sure many of you who have started to look into cellular connectivity as you're kind of figuring out which wireless technology or which connectivity technology is right for your deployment. There are many different options in the cellular world: 2G, 3G, 4G, emerging technologies like Cat-M and NB-IoT, and it can create a lot of confusion. And the unfortunate reality is that picking the wrong technology can create some serious delays in your ability to move forward and have a successful deployment. As many of you, I'm sure, are aware, with 2G sunsets happening around the world, and specifically here in the U.S., where AT&T has already sunset and shut down their 2G network. Using that as a technology, how many, if you were to use T-Mobile 2G, for example, how long will that be around? Is 4G, our 4G networks from a coverage and module cost perspective ready for IoT deployment? There's a lot of uncertainty there that if you haven't thought through it, not only can it be intimidating, but can also negatively impact your solution down the road. So, leading to kind of the next challenge, which is the partner ecosystem of IoT, which is that, one of the challenges there is that different partners may have competing agendas, and they may, some may be looking to offload some technologies and may push some 2G modules, for example, that may not be right for you. And especially in an IoT ecosystem that's expanding so quickly and so rapidly, more providers are entering the space with different solutions. Some of them proven, some of them not, and sifting through all the different partner options to find the ones that are right for you and right for your business be a challenge, because everybody does have a nice story, but finding the partners that have actually proven results is not always easy. The third challenge with getting a solution launched is getting access to technologies that you will need for your solution. Oftentimes, providers are looking for commitments or large opportunities, and if you're getting started for the first time, you may not have that yet. And you may have a fantastic idea, building a fantastic solution that will be successful, but something can be challenging to prove that up front. And so finding ways to gain access to the technology without having a large deployment behind it, a large proven deployment behind it, can often be challenging. So now that I've kind of covered some of the challenges in the speed to market area, I want to hand it over to Z to talk about what you've seen as ways to address these challenges as you're going through your development. So with that, I will hand it over to Z.
Thanks, Evan. I think the point about technology uncertainty is particularly important at this stage because so many cellular networks are indeed in a phase of either shutting down or have shut down already. So depending on where you are located, I'm assuming some of our developers are not only in the U.S., but located overseas, particularly in Europe, you have to decide on the technology very, very carefully. Clearly, if you're trying to deploy a new product inside the United States, selecting 2G or 3G is probably not fruitful at this point. 2G is already on the wane, has been shut down by one major carrier, as Evan mentioned. And 3G will certainly be on the chopping block, if you will, within the next 3 to 4 years as well. So where you need longevity, where you need to have your product out there for a number of years, be a typical technology life cycle at this point, is going to be essential. So you have to also decide whether or not you're going to make a product that is global. In that case, you may need to have a 2G or 3G solution in certain markets where 4G is not yet available overseas outside the United States. Of course, you'll hear a lot of noise about the next generation technologies, CAT-M, NB-IoT, that are coming along. These are intended to be low power, wide area network technologies that are really designed for small amounts of data. If your application can allow for small amounts of data to be sent, then there's the great potential choices within the next 1 to 4 years that would allow you to deploy units at a far lower cost than what cellular can do today. Those are futures. We help advise people generally about their application depending on the regions they're deploying their products in, and then companies and people can make choices about where to go forward with. In the solution space, you have to look for a provider who has these options available to you. If you don't have the technology options, then you're going to make selections that may not be fruitful in the long run when you want to scale or when you want to have a product life cycle that is beyond a few years. Again, noise in the IoT platform space has gotten enormous. There are well over 450 or 500 different available, and selecting the right platform is essential. Clearly some of them are very dedicated to the tasks that they're fulfilling, but if you can find a full stack platform that takes you all the way from connectivity through analytics and providing you the kinds of information you need for your application deployment, that's essential. And those are going to be important because you don't want to be exploring platforms that simply get you where you need to be. You want to be able to pick one that gives you the complete stack. With the negotiations and commitments, I think an important point about, generally speaking, an important point about early deployment is you really don't know exactly what your needs are going to be from a connectivity and cost perspective till you get out there and gain some experience. So the faster you can get your product to market, faster you can get beta testers, faster you can go beyond that to the initial set of customers that might be interested in your product, the more you get experience. How much does your application really use? What kinds of connectivity requirements do you have? And therefore, that's going to drive some costs. You're going to be able to determine success of your product and gain the experience necessary to be able to negotiate the contracts in a better way, because you know on average what your product is doing, or in total what your product is likely to do, and therefore get a better idea of what long-term contracts would need from a pricing and cost perspective. Clearly, having the ability to deploy quickly, and as Evan mentioned, our NEO capability, where you can get products launched literally within 24 hours if you have a device ready to take those SIMs and then use it to gain that experience, is kind of essential.
Yeah, thank you, Z. And then so, to summarize very quickly, as you mentioned, it's, getting to market quickly and preventing future delays is kind of the speed, or, the key to solving some of these speed to market issues. And, from a technology longevity standpoint around cellular, what of is customers who, need deployment life cycles of beyond, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, picking a 4G solution that has 2G or 3G fallback to maximize the current coverage landscape, while also future-proofing that solution, preventing any future delays of next product generation or devices losing coverage and needing to be replaced and so forth. So yeah, Z, thank you very much for walking us through that.
Oh, that's an excellent point about fallback. I forgot to mention that. Good.
Very good. So then next we want to talk about the scalability of IoT solutions, how to achieve scalability, how to have success at scale as your solution becomes successful and as you grow. One of the considerations going back to the technology is limitations around the technology that you choose. Again, there are multiple different technologies, and now I'm speaking even beyond just within the cellular world, moving to technologies like Wi-Fi, LPWA technologies, and private networks that are being deployed, and so forth. And so, one of the challenges is in picking some of these technologies. Not all of them can scale as easily as others. One of the benefits of cellular is that it is truly scalable, especially on a global scale. A global view when you consider 2G, 3G networks worldwide. If you do have plans to expand internationally, it's challenging if you pick Wi-Fi, for example, and as you move to new regions, new areas, will Wi-Fi networks be there? How you manage those deployments next to your current Wi-Fi deployment, that all becomes a challenge. Another major challenge is around planning for success. Depending on the decisions you make during development, that's going to have an impact on how quickly you can or how you are able to scale going forward. If you set up an operations team, you set up a support system and an operational system that is only set up to support so many devices, it's going to be very difficult to outgrow that. So, what happens when you do grow that team? Do you have the tools you needed to simplify your operations to reduce your operational complexity when you move from, again, a dozen to 100 to thousands to 10,000s of devices? Did you plan out ahead of time, how to manage that once you get there? The last challenge is around your supply chain. One of the things that we've seen is that if customers that have set up a very manual supply chain in terms of activations and getting devices to customers and getting them turned on at their end deployment location, that can reduce the speed at which you can deploy more. Out of the box functionality, being able to activate devices ahead of time so that they work. They can, there's no activation step that's going to slow down the deployment process down the road. We've seen as one of the challenges customers have, how do they get that out of the box functionality? Because it can significantly reduce the complexity within the supply chain, and then enables your scalability as you move to deploy more and more devices. So, with those topics, I'd love to get your thoughts on what are your tips for scaling?
Sure. Clearly, when you look at the cellular networks, they're basically designed to expand with growth. The planning that is done to allow for devices to be isolated within towers or within regions that allows the wireless networks to transmit that data from the devices to the towers and then back into the network, they can expand it and they can be managed. And those extensions and growth capabilities are essential for the kinds of applications that we're talking about in particular, which isn't to say that there aren't other technologies. There are other technologies being developed and they can be used depending on the application, but cellular networks provide a certain capability, in particular, long-range independent connectivity. And I think that's essential for people to realize that if you're developing an application that requires a short-range wireless connection, fine if it works well. It may not be a mission-critical application, which depends on the presence of an ISP and an internet service provider to backhaul that short-range data. In the case of cellular, you have an independent path to getting your information from the device into the network in a reliable, consistent way that provides the application the ability to say, my data is going to get through if I have a mission-critical piece of information is going to get through. That's important, and to keep that in mind, there are choices. Cellular gives certain advantages, and you can trade off those advantages depending on what your application requirements are. In terms of planning for success, there was a webinar and a presentation I did a long time back which talked about, yes, it's easy to get to the 10-device stage. How do you plan for scale? You have to make sure your platforms, the choices you make for the people who are providing you the data platforms and the devices can be for scalability so that when you become wildly successful and you're deploying hundreds of thousands of devices, it works well. And in particular, it works in ways where your operational folks are able to get the information necessary for device debugging. Because it's going to happen. Some device will fail or some issue will occur that you'll need to try and solve down the road. And if you don't have the right tools and you don't have the information necessary to be able to debug those defective devices and take them out of service or understand what's going on with them, that's not going to help you. Select a platform where the tools and the data is available to choices that are available to make the decisions that allow you to debug. And as you mentioned, Evan, when you have to do manual activation, if you have to call somebody, if you have to select each SIM and decide whether it's going to be active on the network or not, that's going to slow you down at scale. When you're deploying hundreds or thousands of devices per day, which some of our customers are currently doing, you simply do not want that kind of limitation to get in your way. You want an automation. You want to be able to have the SIMs provisioned already ahead of time In particular, when you have a manufacturing flow that perhaps depends on some testing at the end to make sure the device is transmitting, that requirement simply does not allow for human intervention at scale. You need to be able to automate that process. So you got to have operational and support processes that allow you to grow, allow you to scale. I know that the portfolio that you all are in the early stages, but one very important element for success is to plan ahead. Look for what's going to happen when your application is successful and understand what it takes to make sure your application can grow as your customers demand the growth from you.
Thanks, Ian. So, I think that's ultimately the key point is, so often we see people who are experiencing challenges and difficulties with taking their solution to a larger scale. A lot of the times they are handicapped by the systems that they built for themselves and they put in place when they were early on. And so, plan for success. Plan on having those problems once you have tens of thousands of devices out there. Ask yourself the questions now: what will this look like, and what do I need to be thinking about today? It goes a very, very long way in promoting the ability to scale over time. So, I think that one of the last topic we're going to get to is security. But before we do, I want to ask one more poll question. And a minute to answer that, but we'd love to hear from you. What are your top two challenges right now with you in your current stage of your IoT deployment? And so I won't read through all of these. I'll let you do that. But please pick the two that you find are most applicable to what you're seeing today. And in about 30 seconds, we will take a look at the results. All right, look at those poll results. As I pop up. Very good. A bit of a mixed bag, which is good. Now, clearly, it looks like the clear-cut winner there is knowing which hardware to select, and that obviously is a very big challenge, especially as you're planning out your solution and what it's going to look like. And it looks like also making sure you have a secure solution is also top of everybody's mind. So that's great, and it's going to bleed into to the next section here. But do you have your thoughts on PG?
I think that knowing which hardware to select is a combination of possibly two things. One is the technology, which radio module is really what is necessary for their application, given the technology changes that are occurring. But also, I think there's a lot to do with, depending on which phase of development you're at, putting a product together for your particular application is not always easy. I mean, IoT is such a pervasive technology in a wide range of different markets. In some cases, a standard product off the shelf that is a modem that would allow you to add some sensors and start testing and debugging may be viable to start with, and then ultimately you can get some cost reduction by building a custom product. In some cases, particularly the healthcare industries and others, where you might need a specialized device, a special sensor, perhaps a size constraint will drive certain decisions. That will be the tricky part, and that's something that my recommendation tends to be: keep it simple, get it out there, get your market started, understand what you need, with the limitations that you might have some device and other sizing constraints that take some design issues to deal with, and then go from there. We also have some partners who can provide the kinds of early hardware consulting services, if you will, that would allow people to make some kinds of decisions, not necessarily on the technology, but certainly on how do you put a product together and get it to manufacturability at scale in particular. This is pretty cool. I'm actually, to be honest, I'm a little surprised. I was expecting security to be higher, but the fact that hardware is a choice issue that needs to come up right now, there may be something that we need to help people with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, seeing that we had 27% on the last point, which is figuring out what to do with all my data and what it means, that, we'll probably, stay tuned. I think maybe it makes sense for us to do another version of this, but focused on that topic, because it's, I think there's lots to uncover on that one that I don't think we'll have time to get to today, but that's great to see, and, probably on our webinar roadmap. So. Into the last point here, which is security. As in clearly interest, and I think probably of even growing interest as your solution matures and as you continue down this IoT path. And one of the big challenges with security and the understanding what is noise and what is actually a critical requirement. What do I absolutely need to make sure, and what are the risks of if it's not secure. What we're seeing is I mentioned earlier on that it feels like you can't open an IoT website or read an IoT article without some sort of reference to security or some report of an attack or reference to an attack. As we move to a connected world, as more things are connected, and that's really the whole point of IoT. Security becomes an even bigger threat. More and more things can be impacted by it. If the big challenge is what do we need to make sure is actually walled off? How big are those concerns? The reality is the concerns are real, and we're moving to a point where everything needs to be considered, kind of a critical requirement around security. But I know Z's got some good points on how to identify those. Next one, secure, picking technologies that are secure can also have, either a positive or negative impact on the security of your solution as a whole. Not all technologies are secure. Open Wi-Fi, for example, that is not a secure network, and we've seen some very large-scale attacks because of open Wi-Fi networks. And so, even every other part of that solution, the device may have been very secure, the application may have been very secure, but because the connectivity was not, that opens up, and exposes the entire solution. So making sure that the technology that is picked at every level of the solution, going back to Severio's diagram that he put up about the different components of an IoT solution, there needs to be security across and security at each one of those layers. It depends on the technology that's included. Is then at scale. Security, if a solution that is not secure may only be a problem that's going to affect a couple devices if you only have a small number of devices out there. But as you grow, as you deploy and get into the thousands and 10,000s of units as part of your solution, those problems are magnified and really exponentially as you grow. And so how to maintain and achieve security at scale is also a big challenge. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Z to give his thoughts around security.
Thanks, Evan. Again, well-publicized IoT security breaches have occurred, and they have occurred primarily because this is an area where people and hackers are finding devices that are publicly available on the internet, finding ways to attack them, and if those devices are not properly protected, they have been able to successfully get in. I'm just going to use one little example from last fall, back in December of 2016, which was the infamous security camera attack hack, where basically people were able to get into these cameras where the operating system was a very standard form of an embedded Linux platform, and they had not been properly designed from a security perspective, and people were able to get in and deploy little programs, little processes that would then trigger to create a distributed denial of service attack against very public domains that are available on the internet. The point is that if you deploy these kinds of devices, and you have millions of these devices potentially out there, you have to take action ahead of time. Security cannot be an afterthought. It has to be done by design. And detection and mitigation is essential if you do have a breach, because nothing's going to be perfect, to limit that damage, to be able to find out what may be occurring. But if you haven't taken the best practices into account up front, you're going to have a problem down the road. And of course, as evolution of security attacks, if you will, evolution of capabilities that the hackers can use to get in are discovered in the future, you need to be able to update them. And I'm going to get to that at the sort of the final point at scale. One of the ways that we believe that in the cellular network in particular, you need to be able to make sure that the devices are as protected as can be done. In an enterprise IoT application, we can create a private network effectively. The device communicates over a private network to the systems the customers have at their premises or perhaps protected in the cloud somewhere. That allows us to minimize the potential for hacker access. And again, I'm not going to use the word eliminate because there are always things that are discovered down the road. But if you can follow best practices, do the best job you can upfront by design, then you end up with a better product, better outcome in the long run to minimize the impact of a hack. You also have to understand the limitations of those technology deployments. There may be capabilities that you simply cannot protect against because you're using a technology that if you have access, you provide the ability for a hacker to potentially get in. And you have to understand how can you detect them quickly, how can you mitigate any problems it might cause, and understand the results, the possibilities of what could happen with a particular compromise. How bad would it be? What can you do to resolve it quickly? The solutions with regards to scale, you have to follow industry best practices. There are organizations that are available to help people determine what the best practice could be. We are actively engaged in particular, for example, in the automotive market to create the future technology and security solutions that would allow customers to rely on protection from security hacks and security breaches as best as possible. And my final point, which I cannot emphasize enough, is that if you have a breach device, you need to be able to update it. You need to be able to either take it out of service or fix it, repair that problem. In the case of that camera hack last fall, things been hardwired into the firmware, passwords had been hardwired into the firmware that simply couldn't be changed over the air. You had to literally change the firmware manually from the device. And trying to do that at scale when you may have more devices than people on the planet is going to be darn tough. You need to be able to make sure that the devices are protected, and they are if they do get breached, then to figure out how to resolve them quickly and to fix them quickly.
And I absolutely agree. And you know, kind of boiling it down to a single takeaway, I think on security is that there's a lot there. It's a big puzzle to solve, and there are a lot of solutions out there that exist today. And so using those technologies that have designed themselves to be secure and following some of the best practices that experts have put together around IoT solutions, it's a long way in reducing a lot of those hurdles for you, making it easier for you to get out the door with the secure solutions. So perfect. Thanks again, Z. Appreciate all your insight. And so I don't want to get to your questions before we do. Just wanted to wrap up the key concepts very, very quickly and just go over the solutions that we covered. Getting to market fast is key to the success of your IoT solution. And as you're going through the development, getting fast access to the technology that you need, and designing in solutions that are going to prevent, or picking the technologies that are going to prevent future delays can go a long way towards the success of your solution. Similarly, planning for success up front, planning for successful scalability is a key takeaway here. Picking the tools, picking the partners that will help you scale can go a long way towards enabling that and even promoting that as you grow. And lastly, as we cover, picking technologies that will help you a secure solution and following those industry best practices that are proven can go a long way towards helping you create a secure solution. So, thank you very much for your time. We're going to get to your questions. If you have any more questions or more information about Eris or Neo, please feel free to visit eris.com or neo.eris.com. And so with that, I will turn it back over so we can run through some questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Heaven. Thank you for a great presentation. We have quite a few questions, and in order to answer a good number of them, I will go straight to them. The first one is regarding the Neo. So it's just for the U.S. market, or does it internationally, globally?
Great. So today Neo is for U.S. markets, providing 2G, 3G, and 4G connectivity in the United States. We do have plans to expand Neo internationally, but if that is a current requirement, Eris Direct absolutely has global coverage in over 180 countries. So feel free to reach out to sales@eris.net if you do have a coverage question. Today, Neo is for the U.S. markets.
I guess in relation to the U.S. market, the next question asks, how do I know if Neo has coverage in my area?
Good question. So on neo.aris.com, we do have coverage maps for the two different networks that we provide access to. So those are both interactive maps. You can even get down to your exact intersection if you'd like to see what the coverage options are for you. But all that information, again, is on neo.aris.com.
Okay, great. I think now this is a bit more market-oriented question. So the question is about what are traditional cellular connectivity costs?
Okay, yeah, good question. So I'll take that one. So a lot of it is going to depend on the usage profile of your solution. Obviously, 1 megabyte worth of data is going to have a different cost than a gigabyte worth of data. And so, often what we see is that even within an individual deployment, devices may have different usage profiles or varying usage profiles. And so the costs can change from device to device, which is also why having a connectivity management platform is so important to understand how much devices are using and to be able to control and prevent overage costs, which can be a problem if not managed correctly. So what I would say is that if you wanted to get an indication of what some kind of ballpark and actually rather aggressive connectivity costs are, we do have costs. The pricing for Neo is all upfront listed on the website. You can see the information there. We have usage profiles ranging from 750 kilobytes all the way to multiple gigabytes per device per month. And so feel free to look at that. And we also have a cost calculator there. You can enter in your specific data requirements, so you can get a sense budgetary or actually looking for deployment, get a sense of what those costs will be.
Let me also add one other comment, which is that a few other comments. One of which is that IoT devices tend to be far more regular, if you will. They have patterns, so you can see what the typical usage might be. And as I had mentioned in one of the bullet points, getting the device out there, gaining the experience of exactly what you're going to see from those devices, using the portal that we have to understand what would happen with those devices under different conditions and understand exactly what your kind of usage will be. That'll give you a good feel in time to gain the experience necessary. I mean, if a device is supposed to be sending a megabyte or two, you can set threshold limits and say, hey, if it exceeds 10 megabytes a month, something is wrong. We need to understand exactly what that device may or may not be doing, and perhaps change its pattern and change its profile, change the programming and accommodate for these kinds of overages that are unusual. So the IoT devices, not always, but IoT applications tend to have patterns, and you recognize those patterns and use those to find what your cost could be.
Okay, thank you. Going back to the connectivity side, from a Neo point of view, there is a question asking if Neo is carrier agnostic.
Okay. So great question, and in general, yeah, the Neo platform is carrier agnostic, and we actually have two separate SIM cards available on there that run on different carrier networks. And just in general, by nature of our connectivity solution, it is meant to be carrier agnostic, and Neo certainly is, at least in terms of the carrier options that are there today, available on the platform today, and as well as carrier options that could be added in the future. So in short, yes, but given the nature of SIM cards and the fact that they're designed for specific carrier networks, there are some limitations, but not from the Neo platform level.
Okay. Another one is asking if Aris currently available in the IT distribution channel.
Not sure what that question means, but we currently provide the capability through a number of distribution channels.
We have relationships with DigiKey and Avnet, connectivity options available through there. So and Symmetry Electronics as well. So if you have any more specific question, I'm not sure if we answered it, but feel free to reach out to us at sales@aris.net and reference the webinar, and we'll make sure we get in touch to answer that question for you.
Maybe we can take another one, and if you don't mind, I have one about security by design. So you mentioned that this is a security by design environment. We do IoT but securely by design. How do you do that? And Do you use guidelines? How do you see the benefits of various guidelines that are around? You mentioned best practice. If you can give us a bit more of insights into that, because I think it's very important.
Sure, very good point. I think the major, at the highest level, the point I want to make is that if you deploy a product without thinking about the ways that it could potentially be breached, that is a problem. And so what I mean by security by design is make it part of the process for developing the product, making sure the firmware accommodates capabilities that would allow you to come back and fix problems potentially, or make sure that you've done the right thing to block access in the first place. You do not want to have a product out there that is starting to grow, that is becoming visible potentially to certain hacking elements, and that would then be a problem to go back and touch. So, for example, if I have a password in a embedded Linux environment that I know I want to be careful about, I may not want to leave it open. I may not want to leave it hardwired. I may want to change it. I may want to control it in a good way, meaning that I won't just rely on a consumer to make those kinds of changes for me down the road. I'm going to make it ahead of time and make it more secure to begin with. Second, I might consider having an OTA process now for updates for my application firmware. That is, it could be potentially a little bit of an expense, right? You have to add more memory, you have to add more processor capacity, you have to test the OTA update for your device. But I would almost guarantee you that if you can put that effort up front, put that little cost up front, you're going to save a lot of money in the long run. The cost of implementing OTA updates is minuscule compared to the cost of coming back and touching a breached device because you've now got a problem out in the field. This is the kind of things that we try to advise people to look at. And then, of course, finally, security best practices. Look and see what could happen if the particular compromise or breach that occurs could harm people, right? If you have an application that is serious enough that people could be hurt if there's a breach that occurred, you need to take extra care to make sure that those breaches are protected as best as possible. The protecting those breaches is done as best as possible. For example, if I have a thermostat in my house and somebody breaks into that, okay, it's going to cause a little bit of a problem, but I not have a scenario where somebody gets physically hurt. On the other hand, if I have a car on the street, a connected car on the street, which gets taken over by a hacker, that could cause an accident and cause a serious problem, some kind of issue for the driver or people that the accident occurs with. So depending on the severity of a compromise, you need to take action ahead of time and make sure your device is protected thoroughly.
Okay. I think we can take last one, if you don't mind. The last one is, can you comment on vertical specific applications versus horizontal applications in the marketplace today and looking forward?
Okay. I think that, I'm going to interpret the question slightly to say, do devices allow you to be specific to a particular application, or as sort of general horizontal applications across the board? I think that if you look at the market, it is so large that having a few applications that are very widespread horizontal applications in general is going to be difficult, right? You need to have specifics that are dependent on what is desired, what data needs to be gathered, what control functions you might need, each different market that is quite different. You might have sensors that are quite different. A medical industry will have sensors that are very different from an automotive industry. A financial point of sale system may not need sensors at all, but it may need strong encryption of the data that's being transmitted. An industrial IoT solution may require special sensors that are dependent on the market that it's being deployed in, whether it's a manufacturing facility for chemicals or is a manufacturing facility for maybe water production or water monitoring. So depending on the market, the application could be quite unique. Starting out with general purpose hardware solutions and general purpose application is a good thing, but if you're in a specific market to begin with, more often than not, you're going to get a vertical specific application as an outcome. What we do is make sure that we generalize all of those possibilities in the sense that Neo and our standard Aris Direct platforms support whatever application is possible in an end-to-end IoT marketplace. It's just a question of what specific requirements you have for connectivity, data analytics, pricing policies, etc., that then becomes specific to a particular vertical.
Yeah, and I think to expand on that a little bit, you know, a lot of it is to Z's point exactly, you know, what exactly you're looking to accomplish. If you are starting out by solving a very specific problem with your solution, then maybe a vertical specific application, something that's off the shelf and canned and easier to deploy, might be something that's good. I think if you have plans to expand beyond, you know, what happens when you want to move into additional markets, additional capabilities, look at all additional solutions. You know, a horizontal platform and application solution might make it easier for you to expand that way. But it all depends on what your kind of short and long-term plans are. So,
yeah, it'll be the device that will change to accommodate vertical applications as long as the horizontal platform can support the transmission and storage and analysis of that data.
Yeah, very much. Been extremely helpful. And thank you for all those and to listen to us. I will give the word to David for the closing remarks. Thank you.
The IMC, thank you, Saverio, Z, and Evan. And thank you for joining us today. The recording of today's webinar will be available in the next 48 hours on our website, iotm2mcouncil.org. You will get a post-event email which will include information on your recording. Everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.